where did the story come from?
So we were told that Ekurhuleni Metro policeman had died under very suspicious circumstances.
I remember
And
that,
we were
yeah.
told to dig. And what we found has been mind-blowing. Sebestian Groenewald emerged as a key figure in a violent gang in Reiger Park who used a stolen police rifle to avenge the death of his brother and would go on to kill 5 different people. What's more, Sebestian Groenewald's guns, which were ballistically tested, ended up being linked to 2 high-profile attacks in the tobacco industry, and that fact alone saw the investigation take a dramatic turn. All the avenues to the story, they're just never ending, and it bleeds directly into the criminal underworld. And what's key and what stands out for me is that it's a perfect example of the intersection between police and crime and how the worlds end up merging.
Okay, so Jeff, won't you tell your colleagues about the project that you're working on and what the gist of the Blood Brothers project is, because I don't know whether they know about it.
I think most of you might have just followed my own ramblings over the past couple of months, but it's quite exciting in that it's going to be a 3-part story series on how this EMPD cop, highly trained tactical officer, led a double life. One day behind the badge and after hours was a prolific hitman in Reiger Park. But something I was just maybe wanting to punt to the team and they can think about in the back of their minds while they deal with all the other things is a title for this. So I agree with you that Blood Brothers might be a bit vague for this purpose. But then I was thinking something like blood in, blood out, because that's what all of these guys say. And I mean, it's such an adage from the gang world. So maybe you guys can give it some thought. I'm not sure.
If I'm not mistaken, that was also a movie from my youth in the early 90s, I think.
You would be absolutely correct. 1987, I think, the year of my birth. In 2017, Mark Groenewald, a prolific leader of a gang named the Docks, was gunned down outside the shopping center. He had finished serving time in prison for a separate murder and another gang-related killing, and he'd come out, and from what we know from gang insiders, he'd resumed his old position of power and influence, especially in this area. And just behind me is where he took his last breaths. He was gunned down as he was exiting the shopping center. It's key because it is the murder that essentially started a wave of killings in this area in particular and formed part of Sebestian Groenewald's secret life, policeman by day and a hitman by night. We're here in the Cambrian Cemetery in Rondeboort, a stone's throw from Reiger Park, where Mark Groenewald is buried. His headstone reads that memories will never fade, and certainly for the people of Reiger Park that's true. Even today in Reiger Park, the memory of Mark Groenewald as a ruthless gang lord lives on. The gang which he helped to found is still in operation today, and certainly the memory of Mark Groenewald and his brother Sebestian continues to haunt that community. what is an incredibly nebulous and complex story about gang life, ordered assassinations and a general spate of crime begins with a murder, and it's the killing of a EMPD SWAT police officer named Sebestian Groenewald. His body was found dumped in a patch of veld near Reiger Park on the 2nd of April last year. And the police who are investigating the scene and who were some of the first people to arrive at the site seem to believe that it was a body dump, in that all evidence that they saw pointed to the fact that he'd been killed elsewhere and his body placed there. He was wearing his full police uniform and his cell phone was placed on top of his chest. The police also think that it could be a body dump because there wasn't much blood at the scene, and that becomes key as the story unfolds. So here in this nondescript patch of veld on the outskirts of Reiger Park is where Sebestian Groenewald's body was found. We know from sources close to the investigation that his body was dumped here, and it was discovered on the 2nd of April last year, around midday. It was dumped in a place that's very close to a footpath, which no doubt has a large amount of foot traffic, so the discovery of his body was a foregone conclusion. But what is key here is that his murder, had it not been investigated fully, would never have yielded the trove of information that's come forth since he was killed. Part of the investigation took police officers to EMPD itself, and they searched a vehicle which had been allocated to Sebestian Groenewald. And inside they found an R5 rifle, and this rifle lifted the lid on a wave of killings. When the investigation took its course and the team conducted a ballistic analysis of the gun, they managed to link 6 different killings to this one rifle, which was stolen from police itself. These include Shiraz Obere, who was killed in Reiger Park in September in 2019. Antonio Plakis, also known as Zatas or Alien, he was killed towards the latter part of 2019 in Reiger Park in a drive-by shooting. In that same incident, his girlfriend, Antoinette de Jager, was shot and she died several months later in hospital, and several other people were wounded. In the beginning of 2020, that gun was also linked to the murder of Michael Mackenzie, known as Zeno. So we're here in Reiger Park at a place called Vickers Circle, and if you look at the geography of this area, the entire neighborhood is built around this massive traffic circle, a very popular area for children and people to congregate. It's also the site of one of several gangland-style hit murders, and just a short distance away, in the late part of 2019 in December, is where Michael Mackenzie, also known as Zeno, was shot and killed in a drive-by shooting. We know from eyewitnesses who were present here on that night that his car had left the road and driven through this patch of grass while he was taking fire, and it stopped here. When police examined the scene, they found cartridge casings littered around this area, and it was very clear that Michael Mackenzie was the target of a well-planned hit. Curiously, beyond these assassinations, which appear to be gangland-style hits, this same rifle in the hands of Sebestian Groenewald was linked to the murder of a man by the name of Shuaib Dalji. He was shot and killed while driving on the M1 in Melrose Arch, and from what we know, the police have managed to uncover that this hit was not intended for Dalji, but was actually meant for a key player in the South African tobacco industry named Mohammed Syed, a director of Carney Links Tobacco. Businessman Shuaib Dalji was gunned down along this patch of freeway in what we now believe was an assassination meant for Mohammed Syed. Dalji and Syed had not only been close friends, but they looked similar, they prayed at the same mosque, and at one point even drove a similar looking car. Now, with Sebestian Groenewald dead, his brother Mark dead, and Sean Groenewald in prison for another murder. The last man left accountable is Jonathan Schoeman, a man who initially cooperated with the police and actually made a confession detailing how, alongside Sebestian, they were gunmen for hire, and he paints himself as the getaway driver in this series of crimes.
So I've been struggling to get in touch with Jonathan Schoeman. He's out on bail now after a very lengthy court application. So we're going to go to his house and see if he can speak to us. I certainly have a lot of questions for him, and in reality he's the only one who can answer them. But it looks like he doesn't want to be found if he is home, because blankets are placed over the windows and it looks locked up tight.
Another key figure linked to both of these men is Simon Rudland, the director of Gold Leaf Tobacco. He had an attempt on his life in August of 2019. He was wounded and still has a bullet lodged in his neck. One of the guns that police found with the help of Jonathan Schoeman has been linked to this shooting.
We're here outside the offices of the Fair Trade Independent Tobacco Association, the same place where Simon Rudland survived an assassination attempt in 2019. Now, cigarette baron Yusuf Kaji has been identified as the alleged mastermind behind the hit on Rudland, as well as that intended for Carney Lynx's Mo Syed. At the time, Rudland, Kaji and Syed were all members of FETA, and their coalition unraveled shortly after the attack on Rudland.
In Schoeman's confession, which he's now recanted, he detailed how the men who were killed in Reiger Park were murdered out of retribution to avenge the death of his brother, Mark bin Laden Groenewald, who was murdered in the same area in 2017. It detailed how the mastermind, allegedly Yusuf Kaji, had been in constant communication with Groenewald whilst they followed Dowji home from the mosque up until the moment the trigger was pulled. In the aftermath of the killing, Groenewald is alleged to have told Kaji that Olympus has fallen. The investigating officer in this case has testified in court, and he said that their person of interest, allegedly Yusuf Kaji, had been the one to break the news that Groenewald and Schoeman had killed the wrong man because he was still talking to Mohammed Syed on WhatsApp.
What sticks out for me, and it's something that the reader will always miss, is because they're not with us in the process, and we'd love to be able to give someone that experience. But visiting Reiger Park is an eye-opening experience. And when you put all of these murder sites linked to one gun only on a map, they're all in a very, very close circle. And that means that the people who live there are living under constant threat, because it's not targeted hits. And we've seen it in the cases we've examined, where oftentimes people were caught in the crossfire, people who were completely innocent, completely moved away from the intended target. The killings linked to Sebestian Groenewald and allegedly to Jonathan Schoeman are a perfect example of how a lawman became captured by the underworld. Schoeman is set to face a raft of criminal charges, not only for the gangland killings in Reiger Park, but for the high-profile hits in the tobacco industry. With Yusuf Kaji named as the alleged paymaster in the tobacco attacks, which he strongly denies, it shows how the entire industry was plunged into a bloody conflict.